I used to be a famous wastrel daughter in the capital. At 4 years old, I nearly kicked the crown prince into the water. At 10 years old, I knocked out all the teeth of the left chancellor's only son. At 13 years old, I personally smashed the great red plaque of the general's manor. But I was my imperial grandfather's beloved treasure, and all the civil and military officials dared to be angry but not speak out. It wasn't until I married Cheyenne at 16 that I restrained myself a little. Yet I still raced horses, drank wine, and gambled on polo. I didn't miss a single thing. Later, Cheyenne's new lover thought I was a useless good-for-nothing and cornered me at the horse track. She lifted her slender neck and scolded me for losing feminine propriety, saying I couldn't shoulder the responsibilities of the Marquis' manor's mistress. At that moment, my horse had just lost by a margin and missed the top 3. I had a belly full of anger with nowhere to vent. So without even lifting my head, I said softly, "Tie her neck to the horse and run 3 laps to liven things up for me." Needs a lesson, both her and the horse. That woman was terrified beyond measure, her face full of disbelief. Assaulting someone in public is a grave crime, aren't you afraid? The guards didn't give her a chance to continue, covering her mouth and tying her to the horse track. Her neck was slender and pale when the steed ran, the reins pulled tight and rubbed it bloody. She was afraid of death too. Her hands clutched the reins with all her might, grinding her palms into a bloody mess, yet she didn't dare let go, because if she let go, her neck would snap. I propped my chin on my hand, watching with great interest, wondering to myself how long she could hold on. Hoofbeats clattered, the crowd clamoured, drowning out her blood-curdling screams as she was dragged along the ground. She was dressed all in peach blossom red, lovely with a playful charm now. Soaked in blood, it had a different kind of gorgeous beauty. I held my tea bowl, joking with my gambling companions. "How about another bet? I bet she lives." Everyone shook their heads one after another, placing bets bigger than the last. "I bet she dies. The red-maned horse is fierce-tempered. Having lost the race today, it'll drag her to death to vent its anger. I'm putting down 10,000 taels of silver." Agreed. "I'll stake 3 of my shops in the market district. I bet she dies horribly. If I lose, I'm at your disposal for a year." I found it amusing. They weren't really talking about the red-maned horse. They were clearly saying that I, Wei Jung, am extremely domineering and can't tolerate even a grain of sand in my eyes. Of the women and men who've crossed me, 9 out of 10 have vanished without a trace in the capital. But what they don't know is that this one is different. She is my 4th uncle's illegitimate daughter, and also my own cousin Cheng Ruokshe. This isn't the first time Cheng Ruokshe has provoked me. On my daughter's birthday, she caught a cold and sent people over repeatedly to summon him, forcibly calling away Shiyan, who had just sat down. Because of that, my daughter pouted the entire evening. When I took my daughter on a spring outing, she set fire to the courtyard and sent people crying for help, intercepting Shiyan, who was about to take my daughter horseback riding. Therefore, my daughter sulked for many days. Even on my father's death anniversary, she mysteriously got poisoned and urgently dragged Shiyan to seek medical treatment for her, leaving me alone waiting for an entire day. Every single time, Shiyan acted all righteous and justified. If it weren't for your royal family's heartlessness, why would she be displaced and homeless, having to rely on me to survive? You're also her cousin. How can you compete with a child? You're losing your own dignity. If I weren't her brother-in-law, I couldn't care less whether she lives or dies. In the end, I'm afraid of tarnishing your and Yu Chong's reputation. She is not an illegitimate daughter I bore from fooling around with someone. How does that tarnish my reputation?" Shiyan couldn't stand hearing such things and impatiently interrupted me. All right. If you can't tolerate her, I simply won't care about her from now on." A breath of anger stuck in my chest, neither rising nor falling. So, when Shiyan left the capital, I had someone shoot an arrow that knocked him off his horse, forcefully breaking one of his fingers. Just to vent my anger, the so-called pitiful displaced person had her residence surrounded densely with the Emperor's secret sentries. Cheng Ruokshe knew I couldn't touch her, so she hid behind others and bared her fangs at me. It is still uncertain who will win in the end. I advise you to behave yourself and keep a close eye on that useless daughter of yours." Before I could even speak, she suddenly raised her hand and slapped herself twice, reddening her own face. When a crowd of nobles from the capital stepped through the door, tears welled up in her eyes. If the princess is displeased, beating me or punishing me is only right. I can only blame Ruokshi for being lowborn and getting in the princess's way. I frowned and glanced at her, finding her nothing but annoying. My friend got the hint and kicked Cheng Ruokshi aside with one foot. If you know you're an eyesore, then scram already, you stupid thing. Keep yapping, and I'll cut out your tongue. She bit back her humiliation, covering her deathly pale face, staring blankly at our backs. As we left side by side, only her pitiful rabbit eyes were red with hatred. She refused to give up and actually followed us to the tavern, spouting nonsense in public. No matter how well born a woman is, once married, doesn't she still have to look at her in-laws' faces? If she can't bear a son, even if she has wealth and status, it'll all end up benefiting someone else. Without her husband's affection or mother-in-law's favor, no matter how domineering she acts, it is just an empty show of strength. I sat across from her drinking tea, paying no attention to her blatant provocation, but she thought I was eating humble pie and got even more cocky right in my face. Madam, with your gold-threaded jade ornaments and extraordinary bearing, you must come from an excellent family. What do you think if a woman is jealous and won't allow her husband to take concubines and violates the 7 grounds for divorce by having no son? Should she be cast out according to propriety? She was arrogant and flamboyant, her eyes full of certainty that victory was hers. Everyone also pricked up their ears, their faces full of excitement, as they waited to hear how I, the original owner, would defend myself. I merely took a sip of tea and said slowly, "The imperial family has no divorce, only widowhood. You're asking the wrong person this question, because in my imperial way family, if a husband is unsatisfactory, he can simply die. After his death, I will naturally send his 3 clans to be buried with him. The first to die would be that so-called muddle-headed mother-in-law you speak of." The onlookers instantly fell silent as cicadas in winter. They finally remembered that when I was chasing the capital's nobles with my blade, they would die if they dared to even utter a word. Cheng Ruokshe's smugness shattered on her face, leaving only dark resentment and unwillingness. Bullying others with your power, what is there to be so arrogant about? In your eyes, are we tens of thousands of commoners just for you to trample on as you please? Slap, slap. The strong and sturdy Nanny Hu, with quick eyes and hands, swiftly delivered 2 slaps across Cheng Ruokshe's mouth. Disrespecting the princess, you deserve to be beaten. Cheng Ruokshe spat out a bloody tooth, but ultimately didn't dare to speak again. I stood up and glanced at her with contempt. If you're lowly, then be lowly yourself. Why must you splash dirty water on all the people? Learn your lesson. Next time you're rude, watch out for your life. I sneered at Wei Heng's hidden guards. Sending such trash to disgust me dealing with her would dirty my hands. Clearly, Cheng Ruokshe didn't take my warning to heart. That evening, Xian came aggressively to condemn me. I kept my door tightly shut, serving him a cold rejection, which made his eyes red with anger. Today, Cheng Ruokshe used Xian's token to enter my horse grounds. She strutted arrogantly up to me, and in front of all those noble lords, put on a performance as a fearless white lotus. I could only let flowers be stained with blood to quell the fury. My dear cousin's dress was torn to shreds, her fair skin scraped raw by the coarse sand of the horse grounds, flesh torn and bleeding. That face, stubbornly tilted upward, was still making its final death struggle. By the looks of it, she wouldn't last much longer. How boring. Just as I was losing interest and about to get up, suddenly Xian charged into the horse grounds with a blade. Amid everyone's gasps, he swiftly cut the rope with one slash. He looked up at me with resentful eyes. His features were as before, sharp and chiseled, but unfortunately in that fierce expression there was no affection left. He had come to hate me thoroughly. As if venting his anger in spite, he furiously plunged his blade into the red-maned horse's neck. Blood sprayed out. The horse I'd raised for years looked at me once, slowly knelt to the ground, and after falling never rose again. The entire grounds fell silent. Not a sound to be heard. This red-maned horse was the one Xian had personally and ceremoniously brought back for me the year I married him. Later, when I was 6 months pregnant, he made a solemn promise. When the child grows up, he will ride the fierce horse his father prepared for him to intimidate all directions. Back then, he was not yet a marquis. but a down-and-out warrior whose entire family was imprisoned, who escaped with his life thanks to the marriage arrangement made with my father. Naturally, his heart and eyes were full of me. At his most fervent, he even swore before my imperial grandfather's sict, I, Xie Yan, in this lifetime will only be with the princess. One life, one world, one pair. No concubines, no chambermaids. Wholeheartedly devoted until death. Imperial grandfather was satisfied, and with a wave of his hand pardoned his entire family from exile. Father was satisfied, and did everything possible to preserve his marquis manor, and his position as heir apparent. I was also satisfied. He was thoughtful and attentive in everything before me, and even when my hidden guard's test blade came slashing at me, he used his body as a shield to block it all for me. Adults judge by actions, not intentions. There is no such thing as so much love and genuine devotion. Throughout the capital, those who wish for my death behind my back, yet fawn over me in person, are everywhere. If I were to fuss over everything, could I even keep up doing 70%? Keeping up appearances is enough. I rubbed my brow, sighing inwardly. Unfortunately, now he doesn't even want to put on a show, not even 1%. Xie Yan picked up Cheng Ruoxie and got up to leave the horse grounds. I took the arrow handed to me by the guard and aimed at Xie Yan's heart. Imperial grandfather praised me, saying I was decisive and ruthless, just like him. What a pity! The throne passes to the legitimate heir and the eldest son, not to the beloved treasure of one's heart. Otherwise, the one sitting on the dragon throne shouldn't be Wei Heng, who I nearly crushed into sterility. The arrow was knocked on the string, pulled taut. Xie Yan's expression changed drastically as he shouted at me, Wei Zheng, are you going to publicly murder an important court minister and His Majesty's trusted confidant? Prince Ning has been dead for many years. You, this princess, are nothing but an empty shell, enjoying the imperial family's residual favor. Don't tell me you truly intend to oppose the Son of Heaven. My bad friends' faces changed drastically, each one trying to persuade me. Though he deserves to be killed, don't kill him just yet. That one up top still has no heir and is worried about finding an excuse for revenge. Don't hand him the knife to cut yourself. You've waited 10 years already. What is the harm in waiting a bit more? I'm not the type who can endure. Just as I was about to shoot an arrow to shred the false dignity between Wei Heng and me, my gaze swept to Xie Yan's waist, to the protective amulet my daughter had personally hung there for him. I don't lack for men. If he dies, so be it. If Wei Heng turns hostile over this and we fight to the death on Chang'an Street, he may not get the better of me. But a child only has one father. If I'm going to make her lose her dad, I ought to discuss it with her first. My hand shifted slightly, and the arrow swooshed down beside Xie Yan's feet. The dust it kicked up flying everywhere. It was the protective amulet at his waist that saved his life. I threw down my bow and arrow and turned away indifferently. Before leaving, I didn't forget to claim my winnings from the bet. 10,000 taels of silver, 3 shops, and at my beck, and call for a year. You better keep your word. Xie Yan urgently carried Cheng Ruoxie out, flustered and panicking as he tried to get her medical treatment. But then our eyes met mine from the roadside where I'd been waiting. He carefully placed Cheng Ruoxie into the carriage. That cloak I'd personally bought as a birthday gift for him was now gently and tenderly draped over Cheng Ruoxie's body. So filthy, both the cloak and Xie Yan. When he turned to walk toward me, his tenderness shattered, leaving only a face full of rage. Ruoxie is young and naive, innocently ignorant. Even if she accidentally offended you, you shouldn't have been so vicious. I raised my eyes to look at him, indifferent and contemptuous. A thing raised by a concubine, shallow and ignorant of proper etiquette. I'm just teaching her a lesson about what happens when you bark orders and strut arrogantly before royalty. My Lord Marquis, you'd better think about how you'll explain it when word reaches the court that your naive little girl pointed at my nose and demanded I step aside. The Emperor may be gone, but the civil and military officials are still breathing. Breaking the oath you swore to the Son of Heaven is an offense against the throne. How many heads do the 9 generations of the Xie family have to spare for beheading? My Lord Marquis might as well count them carefully. Xie Yan's face turned deathly pale, his forced suppression of rage making him look utterly pathetic. I couldn't help shaking my head, unable to resist mocking him. Not only are you utterly pathetic, but you also have terrible judgment. Even your mistress is a brothel whore. These words seemed to pierce straight through Xian's heart and lungs. Years of pent-up resentment erupted completely. He roared at me furiously. You just have a better family background. In what way do your character, appearance, or talents compare to Ruokshu's? Since ancient times, the husband is the wife's guide. When have you ever treated me as a husband worthy of respect for even a single day? Ruokshu is gentle and considerate, understands my hardships, feels for my struggles, and moreover respects and values me, holding me up like the heavens. If you dare touch her again, I'll risk mutual destruction and settle this with you before the Emperor. Only 10 years. The person who once bowed and scraped before me, wishing only to serve by my side for a lifetime, now straightens his back to lecture me about not holding him up and respecting him like the heavens. Times change, circumstances shift. My father, the prince, passed away, and when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. The crown prince he pledged allegiance to ascended the throne, and overnight he became a close minister to the Son of Heaven. This made him feel the hierarchy had reversed, that he too deserved my humble submission and compromises. I looked straight at his uncontrollable rage and burst out laughing. No matter how you choose, you're still just a dog for my Wei family. Ask Wei Heng, would he risk universal condemnation and strike a deadly blow against his own cousin for the sake of a dog? When two tigers fight, if a fence-sitter like you dies, he won't even furrow his brow, and I won't shed a single tear either. Xian was struck to the heart, so angry that his fists clenched tight as he roared. You're just throwing your weight around, relying on your imperial bloodline. Horse racing, drinking, and gambling on polo. Aside from these, what about you resembles a noble lady, scorned by the world, detested by the Emperor? Let's see how long you can stay smug. I shook my head with a TSK. At least I can throw my weight around with my imperial bloodline, but that person at the tip of your heart, despite having the same imperial bloodline, hides, like a rat in the gutter, reduced to being someone's mistress. Meeting Xian's furious glare, I asked teasingly, do you like that lotus face of hers? Xian's lips had barely moved when a heart-wrenching scream came from inside the carriage. She burst out of the carriage, clutching her blood-drenched face and screaming, my lord, save me, cursing me for lacking wifely virtue 1/, denouncing me as unfit to bear the responsibility of mistress of the household 1/, cursing me for having no son, committing one of the 7 grounds for divorce, another /. Finally, she had so convincingly won over Xian's heart that it thoroughly disgusted me, so I added 3 more slashes, a full 6 slashes, carved one by one onto that lotus face by my hidden guard. So sorry, the face she'd protected all night was ruined in the end after all. When the delicate beauty wrapped in Xian's cloak tumbled from the carriage, the horses suddenly went mad, dragging the carriage over her legs. Cheng Ruche let out a tearing, agonizing scream and completely passed out. Xian suddenly drew his blade, pointing it straight at me. Must you really drive us to total destruction? I let out a light laugh, casually pushing aside the large blade before me. Raising a blade against the royal family is a crime of great disrespect, punishable by death. Xian's pupils contracted. I then raised my hand and stabbed a blade into his left chest. With both hatred and ruthlessness, I even twisted it. Xian clutched his chest in pain, fresh blood seeping through his fingers. He shouted in disbelief, "You really want to kill me?" My eyes were cold, my tone resolute. You killed Yu Chong's red-maned horse. This blade is what you owe her. I won hundreds of thousands of taels of silver from Polo and sent life-saving food and warmth to the disaster victims. Through coercion and persuasion over wine, I secured grain donations, resolving the urgent crisis for the border troops. At the horse grounds, I selected horses for breeding. How many fine steeds can this bring to our great Chu? I'm a wastrel. I'm a parasite. I'm despised by all and detested by the Emperor. Marquis Dingan, you shameless braggart, what have you? And that cowardly turtle of a master of yours actually done? Oh, you have done something, sucking up to the Emperor to be entrusted with important tasks, wagging your tail at fourth uncle to become a key court official, making a complete fool of yourself, fooling around with your mistress. You've really worked so hard. I pointed at the trembling broadsword in Xian's hand. making no effort to hide the sarcasm on my face. "You're welcome to try. Kill me. And see if the current emperor and prince will absolve you. Can the heads of your Xia family appease the public outrage?" Clang Xian's sword fell to the ground. He knew full well that raising a blade against the imperial family was a grave mistake, and he deserved to bear the consequences of this strike, even if they truly fell out. Wei Heng would certainly not protect him in order to preserve the dignity of the imperial family. He could only turn around in despair and dejection, walking toward Chang Ruokshe. His entire face was deathly pale, swaying as if about to collapse. I returned to the manor with my newly acquired Fergana horse in the carriage. I narrowed my phoenix eyes slightly and said to the guards hidden in the shadows, "Deliver every detail of today's events to Fourth Uncle's desk. Not a word missing." That very night, Fourth Uncle came to apologize, bearing tens of thousands of silver taels, priceless red coral, and a full 4 chests of jewels. My daughter looked at the dazzling array of treasures and asked me innocently, "Why is Princeton giving mother so many treasures?" I stroked Yu Chong's little head and smiled. "Because he fears death." After that day, Xian never set foot in the Marquis Manor again. He purchased a residence on West Street and brazenly appeared in public with Cheng Ruokshe as a couple. Wei Heng even sent the best imperial physician to treat Cheng Ruokshe's face, just to disgust me. I heard the divine physician worked miracles, able to restore even rotted flesh and ruined faces to 80% of their former state. Xi Yan sarcastically mocked me for drawing water with a bamboo basket, all for nothing. He even brought Mother Xia, who had been recuperating in Linan, back to the capital. Mother Xi frequently visited Cheng Ruokshe's courtyard, not to honor me, but to suppress me. Because of the knife wound Xian suffered, Mother Xia openly put on airs as a mother-in-law and used soft tactics against me. She thought 10 years had worn down my temperament and that I'd be bent by so-called filial piety. So she helped herself without asking, taking items from my dowry in the storehouse to fill Cheng Ruokshe's needs. I turned a blind eye. Only when the items were being sent to Cheng Ruokshe's courtyard did I, under the crime of theft, cut off Mother Xi's right and left arms. And I sent word to the Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, saying that the imperial gifts bestowed upon me by the Emperor grandfather had been stolen. When the investigation traced back to Cheng Ruokshe's courtyard, Xie Yan, to protect Mother Xi, could only take on the charge of mistakenly taking the items, even though he used the excuse that husband and wife are one body with no distinction between yours and mine. He was still beaten with 30 heavy strikes. He was even mocked throughout the entire capital. Back when the Xia family faced confiscation and clan extermination, they couldn't scrape together a single copper coin. Yet when seizing the princess's dowry, they sure knew how to put gold on their faces, claiming husband and wife are one with no distinction. When he keeps a golden canary outside, why don't we see him also keeping a pack of young studs for the princess' marital affection? Simply laughable. Mother Xi sneered at me. If I were you, I'd obediently go bring Ruokshi into the household to comfort Iron's heart. With a new emperor comes new officials. You're no longer the all-powerful little princess you once were. With a wave of her hand, maids and servants brought out quite a bit of gold, silver, jade objects, ginseng and blood swallows' nests. I've checked all of these, none are imperial gifts. Ruokshi has injured her body and needs nourishment right now. As her mother-in-law, this is just a small token of my regard. You wouldn't stand in the way, would you? Looking at the smug expression on her face, I shook my head. I won't. A contemptuous smile crept through her clenched teeth. The imperial decree for an equal wife is already settled. If you'd recognized the situation earlier, it wouldn't have come to everyone turning against you, leaving you isolated and helpless. The bitter days ahead of being squeezed out by an equal wife and your children being mistreated, you've brought it all on yourself. She swept her gold-threaded wide sleeves and shouted at the servants, "Follow me." The moment she turned around, I set down my teacup. As I raised my eyes and took the bow and arrow from the servant's hands, my gaze turned ice-cold, devoid of any warmth. Nocked the arrow, drew the bow, took aim, whoosh, one arrow through the back. Mother Xia looked at the arrow protruding from her chest, her face full of shock. She didn't even have the chance to turn and look at me before she crashed to the ground and died vomiting blood, lowering the bow. I clapped my hands. This dynasty governs the realm with filial piety. Wei Heng, with his sanctimonious facade, values his reputation above all else. As long as you die. So what if he, Wei Heng, is the emperor? Would he dare grant a marriage to Xian while he is in mourning? I don't want to kill the innocent indiscriminately. Fortunately, you, who don't know whether you're alive or dead, are not innocent. When I turned around to see how Yu Chong's calligraphy practice was going, those maidservants who usually served tea and water drew short knives from their sleeves. They covered the mouths of Mother Shi's maids and servants, and with a swift sound slit their throats. What happened afterward didn't require my attention. The disguised maid, wearing Mother Shi's fine garments, took a grand procession of silver to Wanfu Temple to donate incense money, making a big show of praying for Cheng Ruoxie's safety, but she suffered divine punishment for her ingratitude. A fire broke out at Wanfu Temple, burning to death only Mother Shi and her servants. The pretentious Wei Heng had planned to wait until my spine was broken before reluctantly issuing the imperial decree for Xian's marriage. Now Xian was dressed in mourning, and Mother Xia had received heavenly retribution. This decree he could no longer issue. Mother Xi's death was suspicious, and Xian suspected me, but he had no evidence until the third day after Mother Xi's burial. Cheng Ruoxie woke with a start from her dream, and when she drank a bowl of calming tea, there lay a finger in the teacup. The gemstone glimmered with an eerie light. It was unmistakably the one Mother Xia never parted with. She was so frightened that she fell seriously ill and became much more well-behaved. 3 months later, we ran into each other on the street. She saw me from afar, and as if she had seen a ghost, shrank back behind Xian, not even having the courage to meet my eyes. Xian glared at me coldly with fury. I paid no attention, and picked out the largest candied hawthorn stick for Yu Chuang. What mother gives you is always the sweetest and best in the world. Yu Chuang was overjoyed, but just as she took the candied hawthorn, it was knocked away by Xian's hand. Completely disregarding Yu Chuang's presence, he roared, "What are you trying to do now? Ru Shui is with child. If you dare touch her, I'm not afraid to perish together with you." His killing intent was too strong. He didn't even notice that Yu Chuang's eyes had already turned red from being frightened by his appearance. I held Yu Chuang in my arms, my voice cold and heavy. "I'll count to 3. If you don't get lost, I'll make her die with 2 lives. 3. Xian indeed knew my style. As my words fell, a heart-piercing arrow shot straight toward Cheng Ruoxie, but Xian swiftly turned around and severed it with one slash. He was ultimately wary of my hidden guards. Biting back his hatred, he pulled the pale-faced Cheng Ruoxie, flicked his sleeve, and turned to leave. Watching his resolute departing figure, I crouched down and asked Yu Chuang, "A dead father, or a mighty mother, you can only have one. Who do you want?" She looked confused. "Dead father," I nodded. "He is destined to die, and I am destined to remain mighty forever." Yu Chuang looked at the candied hawthorn skewer on the ground that had been trampled flat by Xian, tears glistening in her eyes. After careful consideration, she spoke with firm resolve. "I don't want a dead father. I only want mother. Truly worthy of being my child, decisive and clear-headed enough. With that, Xian deserved to die. Just a 5-year-old child, looking at the candied hawthorn trampled flat by Xian, clearly still shedding tears, yet able to make her choice without hesitation. This level of clarity was completely inherited from her mother Wei Zheng's domineering spirit. At the birthday banquet of the old lady of the minister's manor, after 3 rounds of wine, I took the opportunity to catch up with old acquaintances and let Yu Chuang go for a walk in the garden. Everyone in the capital knew Yu Chuang was my lifeline, and no one dared to harm her in the slightest. Even that one sitting on the dragon throne with thorns in his ass wouldn't dare make a move easily. With the nanny accompanying her, I wasn't worried the left chancellor, a veteran of 3 dynasties with completely white hair and beard, asked me with a face full of worry, "Must it really come to this?" I sighed. "He is the one who forced my hand." The old general remained silent for a long while before stating his position. 300,000 troops, solely at the princess's command. The world all believed that I, Wei Jung, was a wastrel. At 10, I shattered every tooth in the left chancellor's only son's mouth. At 13, I personally smashed the red plaque of the general's manor, long since becoming a thorn in both their sides. But few people knew about it. The left chancellor's only son rashly discussed state affairs, which violated my imperial grandfather's taboo. The old man suppressed his anger, but his fury was towering. I raised the banner of fighting injustice and arrogantly charged to the chancellor's manor, knocking out all the teeth of the instigator, thus venting anger for my imperial grandfather. The left chancellor defended me in court, every word and sentence saying I beat him well. My imperial grandfather was amused by my domineering behavior, and with a wave of his hand punished the left chancellor's son with house arrest for 1 month as a warning. The left chancellor's manor owed me an enormous debt of gratitude, and now I've come to collect. The general back then in the Battle of Wangmen Valley fell into an ambush and returned in great defeat. 30,000 soldiers returned wrapped in horsehide. My imperial grandfather was furious and wanted to hold the general accountable. I took the lead, ran to the general's manor gate and cursed loudly, then brought a tall ladder, took down the large red plaque, and smashed it viciously in front of the general's manor gate. The civil and military officials who had been complaining about the general's manor saw that a military general whose family had fought on battlefields for generations, wrapped in horsehide, was being humiliated and trampled upon by a mere child. Suddenly they felt the chill of mutual dependence and sensed great trouble. One by one they stepped forward, using the general's manor's meritorious service, using the old general's 5 sons leaving and 5 coffins returning, using the whole family's loyal martyrdom and their wholehearted dedication with no regrets. They pleaded for the general's manor. My imperial grandfather's decree to confiscate property and impose punishment was ultimately consigned to flames. As for me, after being impeached by civil and military officials for 7 days, imperial grandfather had no choice but to punish me by making me copy books beside the imperial desk for 100 days of reflection. But behind closed doors, he spent 3 months practicing swordplay with me. The general is wise, knowing I burned my bridges to seek a way out for the general's entire household, and has never resented me one bit. The world only knows me as a wastrel, but they don't know that the one time I was truly ruthless was when I genuinely wanted to crush Wei Heng's quail eggs and seize his throne. Back then I was young, my strength fell short, and I failed at the critical moment, dragging my father the prince into a brutal siege. Only after he was forced to relinquish his military command did I gain peace for the rest of my life. Today, I bring out imperial grandfather's martial seal, commanding 300,000 troops, wanting to fight Wei Heng to the death again on Chang'an Street. The left chancellor agreed, staying out of the muddy waters. The general nodded, lending military support. Half my body is already seated on the dragon throne. The disgust Wei Heng has given me should come back to bite him now. On his deathbed, imperial grandfather instructed, Jung, if you had been born male, I would never give my empire to anyone else. Regrettably, you are female. Wei Heng is narrow-minded and tyrannical, not the best choice for a ruler. If one day he truly becomes unbearable, then use your abilities to drive him off the dragon throne. What imperial grandfather gave me was the martial seal from when he personally led military campaigns. He has disgusted me, so Wei Heng is being unbearable. Therefore the empire changes hands. This throne should be mine to sit on now. I stood alone in the corridor in a daze when a servant came rushing in panic. This is terrible. The young miss has fallen into the water. I gasped and hurried toward the garden. Yu Qiong, who had been so lively and energetic just moments ago, was now soaked through, huddled in a cloak, unable to even cry. I was greatly alarmed. Where is Nanny Hu? The crowd made way for a clear space. I looked over and saw Nanny Ho, severely injured, lying on the ground, already unconscious. The insolent servant had no sense, instigating Yu Kuang to push Ruok She. She deserves punishment. As soon as Xian's voice rang out, Yu Qiong in my arms began trembling in terror, constantly shrinking further into my embrace. The red, swollen handprint on her face was clearly visible. Even as I reached out my trembling hand to touch it, I was afraid of hurting Yu Qiong, so I lightened my movements again and again. But Cheng Ruoxie cried out tearfully, "Princess, please don't blame the Marquis. He was just afraid something might happen to the child in my belly, so he punished the nanny in his urgency. I don't blame the young miss for pushing me. Truly Ruoxie's life is worthless. Being able to bear a son for the Marquis with low regrets. I dare not ask for anything more." Publicly revealing that she was carrying Xian's child was forcing my hand. Magnanimously forgiving Yu Kuang for pushing her was playing the victim. Finally, pretending to plead for Xian was continuing to fan the flames, forcing me to break with Xian publicly. I was so angry my fingertips went cold. Xian was still clamoring desperately. "That is the good daughter you raised, so vicious at such a young age. Never mind that the child in Ruoxie's belly is her younger brother. Even if it were a completely unrelated pregnant woman, she wouldn't dare to push her. This slap is a lesson she deserves." Yu Qiong was only 5 years old, scared pale by Xian's furious glare, tears streaming down her face. Each cold teardrop was like a knife, stabbing into my heart one by one. My daughter, whom I couldn't bear to touch even a finger, was slapped by her biological father and knocked into the icy lake. Such hatred. I hate that I didn't go all out at the horse grounds to take Xian's life, allowing my daughter to suffer this calamity. Nanny Hu was fed a pill and slowly opened her eyes. Disregarding her mangled body, she lunged forward and cried out, "Princess, the young miss is wronged." It was she who rushed up to the young miss to provoke her, boasting that with the child in her belly she would drive you mother and daughter out of the Marquis Manor. She even arrogantly blocked the young miss's way. The young miss only pushed her in desperation, but how could a 5-year-old child push her? She deliberately swayed her body and fell down the stairs. The Marquis didn't ask what happened and just dragged the young miss to beat her. This old servant is useless, failed to protect the young miss. Upon hearing this, Xian was consumed with rage. "You lying slave, today I shall enforce family law and take your dog life." He furiously pulled out the long sword from the guard's waist and slashed toward the nanny. Just as the blade was about to fall, I uttered a single word, "Kill." A cold arrow whooshed through the air and pierced straight through Xian's raised arm. Xian looked at the familiar arrow and suddenly remembered that the arrow that severed his finger bore the same mark. He slowly turned around and looked at me in terror. "It was you." I picked up my daughter and handed her to the wet nurse. Then I turned my head to look at Cheng Ruoxie, who was hiding behind Xian with an innocent and helpless expression. On the brink of death, she still didn't forget to clamor, "Princess, surely the princess isn't trying to silence witnesses out of guilt for being in the wrong." Almost in an instant, I snatched the spiked club from the guard's hand. Thud, I viciously smashed it down on Cheng Ruoxie's belly. Yun Ruoxie's face contorted in agony, unable to even cry out. She looked at me as if seeing a ghost. Thud. Another strike. Cheng Ruoxie collapsed to the ground, her white clothes stained with blood, her mouth full of bloody foam. Xian rushed in front of Cheng Ruoxie like a madman and roared, "How can you be so vicious? Insisting on making me, Xian, childless and heirless." Childless and heirless. As he curled up in pain, I let out a light laugh in front of everyone in the courtyard. I said with a smile, "To be honest with you, when Yu Chong was born, Imperial Grandfather rewarded everyone in the entire household with Tangyuan symbolizing completeness. But your bowl was especially different. It was something Imperial Grandfather and I carefully prepared, with a full dose of sterilization medicine." Xian's pupils constricted. I shook my head with a TSK. "For the sake of your reputation, this reward wasn't given publicly. You should thank Imperial Grandfather out of love for me. He showed mercy to your pitiful male dignity. You should also thank me after all. I was merciful enough to leave an heir for your Xia family." As for I cast my gaze upon Cheng Ruoxie, whose lower body was covered in blood. How the child in her belly came to be. "Why don't you ask, to disgust me, how many more filthy things are you going to do?" Xian collapsed to his knees with a thunderous crash, letting out an earth-shattering wail. My daughter, tears streaming down like rain, said to me, "I only want mother. I don't want father anymore." Xian's body trembled, and in the instant he raised his eyes in disbelief. I gave the order. Cheng Ruokshe is fourth uncle's illegitimate daughter after all. Throw her before fourth uncle and let him deal with her. Hearing this, Xian's tense expression finally relaxed slightly, and he even secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that even if it was out of blood kinship, fourth uncle would surely protect Cheng Ruokshu's life. Moreover, with me being so provocative, how could fourth uncle not turn against me? Thus, I pushed my imperial uncle, who only knows drinking and merrymaking, into Wei Heng's camp. They would gain additional support. I didn't miss the wild joy in his eyes. Yet he turned around and left with his daughter in a swagger. Support? That is a bone-scraping steel blade, a life-taking poison. But before I even reached the Marquise's estate, I was surrounded heavily by the Imperial Guards, silver armor and long spears. The fully equipped Imperial Guards forced my carriage to stop. Sitting atop a tall horse was the current Empress's older brother, the commander of the Imperial Guards promoted by Wei Heng. He shouted at me arrogantly, "His Majesty decrees." The princess went on a killing spree in the rear courtyard of the minister's estate, losing all propriety. The princess is hereby ordered to enter the palace to receive punishment. I lifted the carriage curtain and slowly stepped down. Xian then walked out from behind the others. He and I locked eyes, ice cold to the extreme. Surrender without resistance. Don't make your daughter suffer fear and worry with you. The archers all took position in unison. Cold arrows aimed one by one at me and my carriage. Xian, certain I couldn't let go of my daughter, called out, "Yu Chong is ultimately my daughter, Xian's. You can go to your death in peace." I will naturally beg His Majesty for leniency on her behalf. With the Marquise's estate backing her, Yu Chong will never lack wealth and honor. Wei Zheng, I've done all I could in good conscience. Don't stubbornly resist and ruin your daughter's only way out. He was brimming with confidence. What a shame. When I left the estate, I collided with the carriage from the general's residence. When confronting my profligate gambling friend, I said in a low voice, "Does being a dog for a year count? Take my daughter away." He then made a show of surrounding me with the general's manor guards. But it was a diversion, switching Yu Qiong into his carriage. Wei Heng is someone who exhausts all his schemes, determined to find an excuse to eliminate me. Having finally caught this opportunity, how could he let it slip away? So I waited quietly for a long time. Xian, seeing the composure on my face, gasped in shock, suddenly rushed forward and yanked open the carriage curtain, but it was completely empty. He gritted his teeth. So what if Yu Qiong isn't here? Aren't these hundreds of elite soldiers enough to make you confess and submit to the law? Wei Zheng, you've lost in the end. Lost because you were born a woman destined to be inferior. Lost because you'd rather break than bend, not knowing how to assess the situation. Lost because you're stubborn and obstinate, indulging in wishful thinking. Archers, prepare. I looked at him, so eager to eliminate me without even furrowing my brow. I gave the order, shoot. In an instant, arrows fell like rain. In the windows on both sides of the street, on the rooftops, even behind doors. Archers were densely packed everywhere. Each one elite, all personally trained by my father the king, 3 arrows per shot. Every arrow hitting its mark in the blink of an eye. Those archers who had been aiming at me all fell down. Xian's expression shattered. You dare defy the imperial decree. So what if you kill us? There are 3,000 imperial guards in the palace. Just wait for His Majesty to tear you into 10,000 pieces. On the verge of death, still don't forget to make threats. I rolled my eyes and coldly shouted, "Kill." 2 arrows shot through the air, piercing straight through Xian's 2 kneecaps. He collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain. I bent down and asked with a smile, "Want to go see your Ruokshi, you know? I'm a ruthless person. I won't be satisfied unless I let you die with your eyes open." Whether he was willing or not, I ordered him to be dragged away. My carriage ran hard in front, while Xian, with his legs completely crippled, was dragged behind the carriage, his mouth full of wails. I listened with delight and commanded, "Take the long way. Run a couple more laps. After all, the person who is going to die today Won't be able to hear his cries of misery in the future. What a pity. The sharp stone bricks ground through Xian's brocade robes. After just 2 rounds, he was worn into a bloody mess, with white bones faintly visible. I lifted the carriage curtain and said to Xian, whose face was no longer recognizable, "This horse is the child of the red-maned horse. You killed its mother, and today it insists on dragging you to death for revenge. Scream louder. When it hears you, it'll feel especially delighted, just like me." Killing the body and crushing the spirit, Xian had long since broken down. He no longer cared about his dignity and begged, "Wei Zheng, I was wrong. Let me go, and I'll plead for you with His Majesty. We still have Yu Chuang. If you drag me to death, how will you explain it to her in the future?" I looked at him inexplicably. Explain what? Didn't you just hear her say she doesn't want her daddy anymore? She doesn't want you anymore, so what use is it for you to stay alive? As Xian trembled in terror, I smiled even more profoundly and smugly. As for Wei Heng, don't trouble yourself worrying about him. When the hour of Z arrives, I'll settle accounts with him myself. It seemed only at this moment did Xian realize my ambition and schemes. In his eyes, swollen to mere slits, there was nothing but terror and speechlessness. After a long while, he asked me hoarsely, "Could it be that from start to finish, you never once gave me your true heart?" I scoffed and asked, "I come from the imperial family. What I learned from imperial grandfather was the art of emperors. Every move I make is to kill either an imperial uncle or a brother. Which one isn't flesh and blood? You asked me for true heart. I don't know whether to laugh at your naivety or curse your stupidity. The most devastating part is Wei Zheng's frankness. No pretense of deep feelings, no playing at ambiguity, directly exposing how cheap true heart is in the face of imperial power schemes. She was never some boudoir lady to be manipulated at will, but a ruthless player with the art of emperors soaked into her bones. This aura of "I am here to build my career, I've got no time to talk romance with," used truly too badass. On the silent midnight street, only Xian's ashen silence remained. I don't believe it. Clearly, I also devoted myself to you like that. There is no way you weren't moved at all. Lying. You're lying about everything. His voice trembled, hysterical yet tinged with pleading. You just want me to turn back. I can let bygones be bygones and reconcile with you. I can also give up Ruoxi's true heart, throw away His Majesty's trust, even let the whole world break my spine. As long as you admit you were once moved by me, Wei Zheng, say you were moved. What right do you have to never have been moved? Whose life are you toying with? Exactly. I refuse to accept it, and I don't believe it either. Say it. You just want me to turn back. Unfortunately, I'm not. When you tried to use Wei Heng to suppress me, there was only a dead end left. What would I want you to turn back for? You're both things to be slaughtered anyway, whether you turn back or not. What does it matter? Back then, he had no choice but to marry a dandy woman to save his life, enduring the mockery of the entire capital. But what he didn't know was that marrying him, a good-for-nothing, was only because circumstances forced me. Back then, when Prince Cheng was made crown prince, he pressured my father the prince at every turn. To eliminate Prince Cheng and his son's wariness, I went with the flow and agreed to that ridiculous marriage that should have ruined my father's reputation and forced us father and daughter onto a dead-end road. True heart, he performed devotedly. I was also happy to play along to the end. Now that he doesn't even want to perform anymore, I don't even have the thought of stringing him along affection. Things the royal family doesn't have, I don't have much of either. Naturally can't give them to ungrateful wolves. Xian actually couldn't accept that his 10 years and marriage were all toyed with in the palm of my hand. He went mad, crying and screaming all the way, howling non-stop. Unfortunately, the carriage sound was too loud, crushed to smithereens by the wheels. Fourth Imperial Uncle is a smart man. Knew early on I would come. Actually waited outside the door for quite a while. Even knowing my methods are ruthless, still couldn't help but gasp when seeing Xian's disfigured face. Don't let your sympathy overflow. I'm here to see my dear cousin, so that my husband can die with peace of mind. Fourth uncle hastily invited me into the residence. As for Xian, Fourth uncle was in a dilemma, so I waved my hand grandly. Just drag him in. Horse dragging became people dragging, not much difference. I'm such a kind person, even spared Xian a few steps on his road to death. Cheng Ruoxie was hung on a wooden stake, her ankle cut with a huge bloody gash. Bright red blood trickled out, already soaking the ground beneath her feet. This is bloodletting, fourth uncle glared at Cheng Ruoxie, gnashing his teeth in hatred. Back then, her mother took advantage of my drunkenness to climb into bed, extorted 3,000 taels, and that was that. But she also pinned this bastard child of unknown origin on me. All these years, my wife has harbored resentment because of this. How many times has she quarreled with me? But I can't touch her. If anything happens to her, others will only slander my wife for killing her to silence her. My wife is the daughter of the Imperial Academy's Chancellor. She values her reputation like heaven itself. If she were to be defamed, I'm afraid she'd rather bash her head and die to preserve her honor. I'm caught in a dilemma. Truly aggrieved, younger, you should understand fourth uncle's difficulties. Whether true or false, what I want is simply an attitude. Clearly, fourth uncle has provided it. Looking at the dying Cheng Ruoxie, I laughed out loud. Her face was deathly pale, as if she'd been fished out of bloody water, soaked through with fresh blood. Where was that arrogant attitude she once had, swaggering and clamoring in front of me? So I mercifully spoke. I don't like making things difficult for women. Punish yourself. Cheng Ruoxie struggled to move her eyelids, but was ultimately too weak, unable even to glare at me. Cheng Ruoxie was dragged out of the courtyard like a dead dog. Nanny Wu, to avenge Nanny Hu, secretly followed after her. Fourth uncle saw this, and I chuckled. It is not that I doubt fourth uncle won't be ruthless enough, but everyone has their own grudges to settle. She wants to take her revenge. I can't stop her. Fourth uncle repeatedly agreed. The dying Xian on the ground barely managed to speak, his breath like gossamer, helping a tyrant commit evil, murdering your own daughter. You won't die a good death. Fourth uncle's eyes turned cold, grinding his teeth in fury. So I leaned over and suggested, I heard fourth uncle raise 2 fierce tigers. He has got a tough backbone. The tigers must love that, right? Fourth uncle's pupils trembled, yet in my calm smile he saw the chilling intent to kill. Then he understood. The death of Cheng Ruoxie alone wasn't enough to make him pledge allegiance to me. Wei Heng's trusted aide, the current Marquis of Ding'an, died at Prince Anne's residence, entered the tigers' bellies in his back courtyard. Even if fourth uncle didn't want to board my ship, he had no way back now. Simone opened the tiger cage. Xian knew death was upon him and struggled desperately, but fourth uncle personally grabbed him by the collar and dragged him toward the tiger's jaws. Xian trembled. I'm a close minister of the Emperor. How can I be humiliated and killed at will? Aren't you afraid of being held accountable? Prince An lowered his voice and said through gritted teeth, Father Emperor's dragon-slaying saber is in her hands. I don't know if it can slay the true dragon son of heaven, but slaying this prince would be easy as pie. Xian's worldview shattered once again, terrified yet bewildered. How could she have the dragon-slaying saber? Prince An sneered. You were lucky enough to marry her thanks to your grandfather's life-saving grace. Unfortunately, you were also unlucky enough to provoke the one person you shouldn't have. In your next life, have some sense and try to live a few more years. Clang! Xian was thrown into the tiger cage. The door clanged shut and locked completely. Tigers roared, claws emerged. Xian let out just one earth-shattering scream before being torn into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere, truly filthy. I tightened my cloak and turned around. Family matters are settled. Time to enter the palace. Fourth uncle, help me. With the commander of the Imperial Guards dead by my hand, holding his command token, I said just one sentence, His Majesty urgently summons, and entered the Imperial Palace. Wei Heng sat on the magnificent dragon throne, clearly having waited for quite some time. However, the one who returned was not his commander of the Imperial Guards, but me, skirt hem flying, black hair flowing. The cold wind of midnight blew through the palace gates, cutting flesh and scraping bone. I stood below Wei Heng, yet my back was ramrod straight. Not performing the kneeling bow, not avoiding the emperor's direct gaze, looking at the token in my hand that could command 3,000 imperial guards. Wei Heng's fist tightened inch by inch beneath his sleeve. "They've all been killed by you," I nodded. "Also your disgusting Shi Yan and Cheng Ruoshe, all dead." My frankness made Wei Heng's face drain of all color in an instant. His ramrod straight spine seemed to slump down in the blink of an eye. He spoke lazily, his tone unspeakably helpless and powerless. "You and I are blood relatives. How did it come to this, facing each other with weapons drawn?" I sighed. Utterly regretful. "That is right. You and I are blood relatives. So why do you harbor such deep suspicions against me? Unable to find fault with me, you use a concubine to force me into making mistakes and walking down a dead end. In elder brother's eyes am I Wei Zheng, only fit to be buried in the back courtyard, to die in inner palace struggles." My voice was languid, so casual, it was as if I were talking about someone else's family affairs. This poison, from the moment Shi Yan obtained it, I had already switched it out. These past few years I feigned weakness, burying myself in drinking, horse riding, and polo gambling, all to put your mind at ease. The so-called terminal illness and imminent death were all meant to comfort you. Imperial power changes hands, blood flows like rivers. In the end, it is our great Shu's brave and upstanding soldiers who lose their lives. I truly couldn't bear it. Wei Heng let out a soft laugh. "You're being too modest. Back then, when I said you were born a woman and had no claim to legitimacy, you flew into a rage and pinned me down, wanting to make me lose my qualifications as a man too. At that moment, you showed not a shred of mercy. Bringing up the past, we both couldn't help but laugh, laughing until the end." Wei Heng's long eyes lifted slightly, Wei threatening with an air of natural authority. "I am the sovereign. How could I allow myself to be at anyone's mercy? My 20,000 personal troops outside the city have long since entered the capital. Even with the Imperial Guard command token, you're no match for me. Wei Zheng, let it end here. I will, in consideration of our blood ties, leave you with an intact corpse." I pulled out a dagger carved with dragons and phoenixes from my bosom, casually playing with it in my hand. Wei Heng laughed contemptuously. "Don't tell me you think you can kill me with just a dagger right now." As his words fell, countless hidden guards dropped down from the roof, each holding swords and blades, standing ready in formation, protecting Wei Heng tightly behind them. Through layers of guards, Wei Heng shouted at me, "Drawing weapons before the emperor is treason. Your daughter will have no way out." I raised my eyes to look at him and asked back, "But what if I take the throne?" Wei Heng's expression changed drastically. A eunuch stumbled through the door shouting, "Your Majesty, this is bad. 20,000 personal troops are surrounded by 100,000 soldiers on Chang'an Street." Wei Heng's expression changed drastically. I curled the corners of my lips and smiled. "With one command from me, blood will flow like rivers. Wei Heng, you've lost." Wei Heng no longer had his earlier composure, shouting in panic. "How can this be? The Grand General is loyal to the Emperor and loves the country. He would never become a traitorous subject. Tell me, what exactly did you do?" "I did nothing. I only told the General that the disastrous defeat at Wangmen Valley years ago was personally orchestrated by your dear father Emperor. After spending 10 years searching for solid evidence, he will never be of one mind with you." Wei Heng panicked. His veins bulged as he roared in fury. "Kill her for me." As his words fell, Princeton charged through the door with the Imperial Guards. The Emperor lacks virtue, with the dragon-slaying blade in hand. He must be killed. "Kill the enemy is few. We are many. Victory is clear." The dragon-slaying dagger pressed against Wei Heng's neck. "Write the abdication edict." He hesitated for a moment. I slashed down with one strike, severing one of his fingers. He rolled on the ground in pain, large beads of sweat covering his entire head. I asked again, "Will you write? Wei Heng has been spineless since childhood, not favored by the imperial grandfather. At his age, having sat on the dragon throne for so many years, he still has that stupid look. I thought it would take at least 3 to 5 fingers, or at worst. The thing I didn't have the strength to crush when I was 4 years old, gouging it out today would have no regrets. But unexpectedly, he gave in. I am a person who keeps my word. Imperial grandfather begged me, when the day of armed conflict came, I must spare his life. I did it, shattered his limbs, threw him to an enemy country to beg. How is that not sparing his life after years of endurance? I finally took back the throne that belongs to me. Ancestral rules are meant to be broken. Women now have a voice in the imperial court. Yu Chuang held a forbidden book and asked me, Mother Empress, the 3 obediences and 4 virtues for women. How should they be explained? I chuckled softly, tossing the book into the fire basin. Watching the great fire blaze up, page by page the shackles imposed upon us curled in the flames, finally turning to ashes. Looking back at Chuang, I explained seriously. To you I say, first sovereign and subject, then husband and wife, what need is there for the 3 obediences and 4 virtues for women? To the world I say, whoever is strong holds the power of speech. Why should we be confined to the inner chambers with the 3 obediences and 4 virtues? Moreover, if they are not strong enough, you and I will give them the opportunity to become stronger. Chong understood. That is why we must establish schools, have men and women take exams together, and appoint female officials. To support the backbone of the world's children, even if it means bearing a bad reputation, we will not hesitate. I already have a bad reputation out there. I'm a notorious profligate. Killing my brother, killing my husband, overflowing with evil. How could I have a good reputation? But by purging the court within and intimidating nations without, with an iron fist, in just a few short years, the country became peaceful and prosperous. Governance was smooth and harmonious, and everything flourished. The common people with homes began to praise me, saying I ruled with both civil and martial prowess, carrying forward the legacy, the eternal profligate emperor. On his deathbed, the left chancellor sought me out. He nodded at me with relief, leaving only 4 words, no regrets to the world, before passing away. Though fate gripped me by the throat, I never once bowed to convention or accepted my fate. Wielding an unyielding sword, I severed the shackles of worldly customs and seized everything that belongs to me. This eternal empress, celebrated through all ages. It is all what I deserve.